Welcome to the Honest Business Podcast. This is the show for ambitious, value-driven business owners who are actively building a business that works for them. Hi, I'm May James, and I'm here to make scaling your business easier and more rewarding than ever. Each week, we will dive into simple, sustainable strategy and pragmatic leadership discussion to support you as you take imperfect action on your entrepreneurial journey. If you want to stay ahead, exceed your growth goals, and have a purposeful, thriving business, then keep on listening. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode we are going to be talking about working with family in business. This is something that I get questions about a lot and people are really interested in because I do work with family members in my business, particularly two. One is my sister and one is my mother-in-law. And today I'm going to share with you my experience. I'm also going to share with you what I think works well and what doesn't. I'm going to share kind of what I see at different stages of business because I also work in my kind of coaching and mentoring and consulting business. I work with people who are also working with family, and so I have quite a big kind of catalogue of experiences to pull from, and I thought this might be helpful for you. So I just want to touch on me and my experience. And so I started working with family members, I think around 3 years ago. It's kind of hard to put a date on it because I can't fully remember, but it was around 3 years ago my sister started helping me. Please do not come for me because I'm going to say she was 12, I think, when she started working for me. And yeah, she basically was like me when I was 12 and she couldn't get a job and she wanted to make money. And we are all quite entrepreneurial, I would say. Not particularly that she has a business, but just that she knows the power of money and what it can do, and she wanted to make some money. So me being the, understanding where she's at and what that looks like, I was like, come work with me. And so she has worked with me ever since. She doesn't work with the May James business. She works in one of my other businesses, and she has been such an immense help. We used to joke years ago that she was probably the best paid 12-year-old going because it meant a lot to me to be able to pay her for her time, and it was really important because you can't go and get a job when you're 12, but if you want things, you need money. So I have paid her ever since, and we regularly have pay rise discussions that she often brings up, which I just love. And I love that the experience, and this is one of the things I want to touch on, of how impactful working with family and giving people opportunities is, because everything you do and stand for drips down to them. And for my sister, that's from a young age, and so that's been really beautiful to be able to provide that for her. So she has worked with me for, I think, around 3 years, and her role has grown, and she's really developed a strong skill set from that, which we can come back to later on. My other current family member that is working in the business is my mother-in-law, and she works across two businesses, or has done across two businesses, mostly now works across one, and that is the same business that my sister runs. And between the two of them, they pretty much run that business now for me, and I do not really have much input in the sense of me having to physically do much. So she is the most amazing help, and she has been the most incredible person to have on board and to have kind of on the journey with me. Her role has evolved, and it evolves quite rapidly and frequently. She at the moment is my PA, so she does all my personal stuff that I need. If I need my shoes running and getting healed and things like that, she does that. She often comes with me if I'm traveling for business and I need an assistant. She will often come with me to that whole thing, which is really fun. She's also my ops manager for one of the businesses, and she basically runs everything. She helps make sure that I can do what I need to do and have the time and the space to do so. She runs the customer service for one of the businesses and is basically kind of the fulfillment and just essentially the operations arm of a business, and she's such a big help and is so amazing to have on board. So I'm eternally grateful for having the pair of them in the business, and we do have other team members, but they do really kind of take up a big chunk of the team, and so I just wanted to share that with you. Now, the I'm not really here to just talk about me because I want to make it useful for you. So I'm going to go straight in the deep end, and I want to talk about when it goes wrong. So just for some context, in May James, which is my consultant arm of the business and coaching, where I work with female business owners, particularly service-based, I do have a kind of specialty in terms of my one-to-one where I do actually help businesses that are either kind of family or they have multiple founders or directors. And often when there is that, it can be that it's a family business. So I do have an interesting take on things. So when I've seen it go wrong, it can go wrong very quickly and very easily. And it goes wrong often through one tiny thing that can then kind of unravel into a big thing. So the one thing I would say is if you are in business with family or you want to go in business with family, is you need to be really clear on what the purpose of the whole thing is and how you're going to manage that as you grow, because it can get very messy very quickly. The key thing for me is communication. That is what comes down to it. It's always about communication. Communication is everything. I think if you're working with family, you've kind of got to communicate more in some respects than you would other team members. And you also need to make sure your communication channels are really clear. So the way we do it is we have certain channels that we talk to each other on that are just for business, and then we have personal channels that we only talk to each other. So for example, I run most of my team through Voxer, which is if you're not sure, it's like a WhatsApp for business. It's kind of a communication tool where you can send voice notes. That then is a business channel. Then I use, WhatsApp for personal, Facebook Messenger for personal, just try and keeping it separate has really allowed us to have the clear kind of cut things. It also means the communication's easy because if it's coming through a certain channel, it's like, okay, we know that it's about business and it's not, we don't have to prep it by saying, sorry for talking about business, blah, 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 all the rest of it. The other thing that comes into this is boundaries, and boundaries is one of the biggest things for making this successful and working in business with family. For me, some of the things that I've seen work well is to have really clear cut set hours of when you're going to talk to each other about business. If you be really open with each other about if you go for lunch, is it a business lunch or is it not? So sometimes me and my mother-in-law will maybe go out for lunch, and if it's just the two of us, it can very easily become just a business lunch, and that's fine. Sometimes it is, but we try and be really clear of like, okay, is this a business lunch or is this not? Or is this half a business lunch and then we're going to just cut it and then, not talk about business? That can be really important, especially if your family congregates and other people are involved who aren't in the business, because I think that's another clear thing. So for us, we try and be really clear of, if we're going for dinner and we're all sitting and there's many other family members, we might say, okay, I'm just going to mention this because I need to mention it to you, but after that, that's it, and we don't. And I think this real flexibility helps, but it has got to be kind of peppered with realistic boundaries. And the boundaries will only come from both parties, or however many of you are there, kind of agreeing on it. Because what I've seen happen is somebody dictates what's going to happen and the other people are like, well, it's not really going to work for me. And that's where it kind of doesn't work, because it's like, if not everybody's on board in the first place, you're never going to follow through. Because with the boundaries, you both have to, or however many of you there are, you both have to really lean into and stick to the boundaries that you set. I would also encourage you that obviously like everyone has a contract of some degree. So like, for instance, my sister, even though she was 12, like we wrote her out a really basic contract, and it just had expectations and what I would give her and what she would give me. And not that it's a legally binding contract because she was 12, like, it was more just for her to fully understand what was going on. And that really kind of helps both parties to have something to kind of refer back to. Now, don't get me wrong, it's kind of, I don't know, you have to do this all with a pinch of salt. And obviously I'm not saying go and hire 12-year-olds, like it's illegal, I get that. But if you want to help people out, if someone can, I know there's a lot of people who use younger family members for their social media, for example, because they don't understand what they're doing or haven't got any interest in it. And if that is the case, then, speak to your accountant and lawyers respectively of what is the best solution. Once my sister is 16, then we will be able to kind of do it in a more on the books way, if that makes sense. But right now she's still 15, so it's kind of hard. It's like, oh no, it's really frustrating. But, I get it. It's a bit of a strange setup. But there will be others out there of you that are also in that situation. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I know no one talks about this. And I know some people are going to disagree. But I think it's really important that we can have these conversations, because you sometimes think like, oh, is that not okay? And I just want to say that the benefit it's brought my sister has been absolutely huge. The other thing I wanted to talk about boundaries was being really clear on what the other person wants. So if you are someone who is going to use family members as part of your team, and the other family members are not like bought into the business in the sense if they're not a founder or they're not a director, you need to get really clear on what do they actually want. Because what I see a lot is people, it's the same as building any team, right? It's like you get so invested in your business, other family members don't care as much as you. You've got to remember this, like they're not interested. You are obsessed with your business, it's your baby, it's everything, and you want there to be this amazingness that they love it. And they might do, but they also have a life and they probably don't obsess about it like you do. So being really clear on what do they want is really important, and it needs to be clear. And so, that's different for the two that are in my business, and we kind of change accordingly. The other thing I would think about is their roles and how that develops. So similar, obviously, to any business, any team member that's coming into your business, but really getting clear on their roles and what do they want from the business. The one thing I love to do is be really flexible. We're a real agile, lean company, so it means that I can put people in different positions and they can try things. And, for example, my mother-in-law was doing some LinkedIn stuff for me at one point and she hated it. And so I was like, okay, great, no problem. We'll just scrap that, get someone to do LinkedIn. You go and do X, Y, and Z. And being that kind of open book is really key for people to feel like they're seen and heard and feel like they can move in different directions. And that's the same with my sister. So my sister started out doing one thing and her role has now developed much more, and it's much more technical as she got older, as she understood the business, as she technically wanted to grow. And also she's really clear on what she doesn't want, I mean, she's at school full time, and it's you have to be really open with what people want. And I think especially if it's more of a like casual relationship, then it needs to be more so kind of set. The other thing that's really key to think about is leadership. Your leadership needs to be really strong, especially if you're going to have other team members who aren't family in the business. So there's one thing to have like your whole team be family. There's another thing to then bring other people in. And I've seen this before where it can be really weird to define the boundaries, because the boundary of a family boundary can be very different to an actual employee boundary. And so if you all work from home, like I've seen it before where people work from home and then they bring other employees in, and so then they come and they have like a home office, and that can be really important that you have really strong leadership to guide people through that. Because what you don't want to happen is you don't want your family, that family dynamic that's always going to be there. I think it's impossible to say like don't bring it with you, because it's kind of inevitable, but how do you not let that affect other team members? So as much as people might say to you, just leave it at the door and you're not family when you're working and this, that and the other, I disagree, because I just don't think that's realistic in the world that we're living in right now. And I think that inevitably there will be things that come up, because we're human beings and we shouldn't kind of down that as an experience, as a lived experience, that will come up. So what really needs to happen is, it means that if you are leading a team where some of your team members are family and some of them aren't, you really need to work on your leadership, and you really need to be clear on what does this mean for the business, what does this mean for the direction of the business, and what does this mean for other team members? How do they feel? What is it going to look like for them? And are they going to feel welcomed? Are they going to feel like, yeah, this makes sense? Or are they just going to think, well, this is really weird, and there's a clique, and there's, this person gets special treatment and this one doesn't? Like, that's a big thing you need to be clear on, of like every single person needs to be treated the same. It doesn't matter whether they're family or not. I know that sometimes you might think, well, like blah blah blah, I don't know. And especially if you hire your children, if you hire children, that can be hard. You are already coming with a whole host of things that you are used to doing and being and seeing, and if you don't take the time for you to be really clear with your children and who's coming into the business, whether that's full-time or part-time, there will be issues. So you need to really up your leadership in this area. And that's why I help people with this, because it can be a real minefield and it can feel like such a basic thing, but it, inevitably comes with its challenges. The other thing I wanted to kind of talk about today was the benefits of working with family, because I don't think these are talked about enough, and often you hear a lot of negative things, that it was a disaster, it's really bad, it's not good, it's, many things. But I wanted to really touch on the positives, because there are so many benefits, and I can't tell you enough how amazing it is to work with family. So one of the biggest things I wanted to say is that the fact you can give people an opportunity to earn more money and to upskill themselves and develop their personal life is huge. It brings me so much joy. And being able to give people an income stream is amazing, but also for me more so is about how do we upskill people and how do they leave much better off than they came. And that's something I've really focused on, of really letting, especially my sister, like, guide what she wants to do and guide where, what does she want to do and where does that leave her, and how do we develop people so that they inevitably are going to leave, right? This isn't the goal, or especially for me, the goal is not to have them forever. Like, they are their own individuals with their own paths, but it's very clear to me, and if you can bring this into your business, then great. For me, it's about how do I ensure that they are empowered and that they're learning, and then it means that they can, put something on their CV that really helps them to elevate their position. Because one thing we disregard a lot is the idea of how hard it is to break through the job market and how hard it is to really, get to that next level sometimes. But the joy of having a business and coming into a small business is that you basically do everything from day one, right? You can be so flexible and you get asked to do all these things that in corporate you maybe never would have, but it allows you to elevate them and allows you to kind of skyrocket their emotional intelligence. And that's something that's really pleases me, of the personal development that goes into it. It also really helps me. I like to kind of suggest and push them in their development of what do they want to learn. So can I pay for them to do any kind of training or whatever they want to do? Have we got any resources that they want to delve into? Do they want to learn new technology? What is it? And I think that's really a beautiful place to be able to give people that opportunity. So yes, it's the same of any team member, I suppose, but I think when it's your family, it can really bring that satisfaction level up and really help you feel, ooh, yeah, this is a really fun thing to be able to do. And I'd say don't kind of undermine that, because it's really important. And I know for my sister, she has a lot of things that she can now say that she does that most 16-year-olds are not going to be able to say, and that really kind of brings a lot of happiness. And for me, it's more about the real life application. That's what I'm interested in. It's how do I make sure that the people that are choosing to give me their time, and yes, we can compensate them in ways, but how do I make sure that it's more than that? And how do I make sure that as someone who feels like an ethical business owner, how can I make sure that that is really gonna give them something to use for the next, at least few years, if not for the rest of their career? So yeah, that is kind of where I wanted to leave that today and what to kind of discuss with you. I would really encourage you to look into working with your family if that's something you want to do. What I would say is it's definitely not for everyone, and for some people it would be the worst decision ever. I think if you're someone who struggles to have difficult conversations, then this is not the path for you, because you really do have to have these conversations semi-regularly. I mean, once you get into a pattern, it's not so much, but there definitely is a every 6 months at least check-in that's needed of a really stark, honest, deep conversation around how things are going, what they're doing, are they happy, what needs to change, and that doesn't really get that much easier. If you don't enjoy it, you've either got to be prepared to learn and to really up your leadership and to really kind of expand what your belief is with yourself around how you show up. And then, you kind of go from there. But if you are someone who doesn't like communicating, you're going to really struggle with working with family, in my opinion. So I'd really encourage you to, as always, work on your communication skills. It's the same as anything in business. Communication is the biggest thing. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions about this topic, feel free to drop me a message on Instagram. My Instagram is @may.james_. Drop me a message and I'm happy to have a conversation, because I think this is a really kind of cool topic, and it's something that many people have different experiences on. I'm definitely not saying that I have the fully formed experience, but I definitely have some interesting anecdotes to kind of pull from. Thank you for listening if you got this far, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Honest Business Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you are subscribed, and if you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others and leave a rating and review. To catch up with all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at may.james_, where I share the raw, uncut, behind the scenes reality of what running multiple businesses every day truly looks like. As always, links and any resources that were mentioned in the episode will be in the show notes below. That's all for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time.